for the pledge, please. Okay, first up is the appointment of a police officer in the Irvington Police Department. Officer Burke.
You have to do your resolution.
Good point. So, forgive me. This will be quick. At least if I get my computer up, it's sorry. Okay. Offering the following motion, resolve to appoint Daniel Burke to the permanent position of police officer, grade 2, at an annual salary of $88,634, effective November 19, 2024, subject to completion of a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks and not more than 52 weeks. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay, now, sorry. Okay. Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Daniel Burke,
I, Daniel Burke,
of the Village of Irvington,
of the Village of Irvington,
County of Westchester, State of New York,
and County of Westchester, State of New York,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I dressed for you today. No problem. In sneakers before, and it's not a good look. More?
Yeah, we're good. You take all those pictures.
Yeah, no, we'll have them.
You good? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry, for having all the backup. All right. We're gonna exercise the prerogative of the mayor, which is to ignore the agenda and take up something that is bittersweet. One of the benefits of working on the Board of Trustees is to partner with people who want to do something positive for the community. You can't ask for anything more from fellow board members than that they be respectful, particularly when we disagree, willing to consider differing viewpoints, smart, persuasive, patient, dedicated, and maybe apply knowledge from their day jobs or connections in the community. It's been a privilege to serve on this board with Larry Lonke and Larry Ogrodnik. They've personified the ideal working partner I just described. We've had disagreements, but often they've persuaded me to rethink my position, and that's how it should be. I'd say the same about you guys too. But we're not here to praise you. Most of the people in this village have no idea how hard you've worked on their behalf and how disruptive to your personal life service on the board can be. Larry Lonke gave 8 years, I think, and Larry Ogrodnik 2 years. Trustee Lonke has been liaison to the rec department, CAB, housing committee, and the fire department, and probably a lot more than that that I'm not counting. But Larry Ogrodnik has served as liaison to the building department, including the planning board, ZBA and ARB, the tree preservation commission, traffic calming, and other committees. That means meetings and events on top of village board meetings, and oftentimes volunteering for events. Both of you have tried to solve resident issues that were brought to your attention, and those are matters, if people don't realize it, that are over and above anything else you're dealing with at a board level or as a liaison. There's no way to convey to the community how much effort you've put in on top of whatever personal or professional obligations you must attend to. You have my profound gratitude and the knowledge you will be sorely missed. I also want to thank your families for their willingness to sacrifice their time with you for the benefit of the community. I consider you friends, so please do not be strangers, particularly if I ask you to join a committee, or if you want to return to the board. There's not much that a mayor can do to reward you for what you've done, except to thank you. But I will do this. As long as I'm mayor, if you come to the board and want to speak about a concern, I will ignore the 3-minute limit. Now, if that does nothing else, it's going to make you a lot of friends in the community because they know the power that you now have over this board. Honestly, thank you both for everything you've done. And now you can suffer through the rest of this meeting.
I can just say a quick.
Of course,
couple
you
of
guys
thank
can
yous.
say anything you'd like.
I'd like a couple of notes, and they're all really just thank yous. First of all, John, thank you for that wonderful introduction, and I just have a list of people I want to thank, and I'm starting with my wife Nancy, who I've said before, her only condition for me to do this was that I was home for dinner the night before every meeting. And sometimes it was a 5 o'clock dinner, or usually or 6 o'clock dinner, but that was the only condition, and for 8 years, we've been able to figure out how to get this done. I'd like to thank this board, Arlene, Mitch, Larry, and John, for their dedication. John, you hit the ground running, not an easy thing to do. And you filled Brian's shoes, not an easy thing to do, but I guess easier because he filled your shoes. So those shoes were there already. I want to thank the board that inherited me, Brian, Connie, Mark, and Janice. They encouraged me to find my voice on the board, and I want to thank the voters for allowing me the time it took to find my voice on the board. And I only wish Larry Ogrodnik was afforded that same opportunity. I want to thank all the village employees I got to know. I've waved to everyone on the street. I learned that from a wise man. Every time a village truck went by or a police truck went by, I would wave. And Janice Silverberg said to me early on that the board comes and goes, but in general, the village employees remain. So they're here over an extended period of time. I want to thank all the resident volunteers for their dedication. I was a liaison, as John said, to RPAC and all their subsidiaries, the Woods Committee, the Ignatius Center Committee, the CAB, the Senior Citizens, the Housing Committee as well worked very hard, and the Fire Department. I only regret that we weren't able to get a project started during my term for them. Mary Ann, you're up there. I want to thank you for all the counsel that you've given us and me, and I mean counsel in every sense of the word. I appreciate that. And to Larry and his staff, Karen, Katie, and Brenda before him, Larry handles a tremendous workload with integrity, modesty, and a vast wealth of knowledge and experience. He so ably led us through the pandemic, and I'm happy to call you my friend, and I hope I get to visit you in the next year or so as well.
Same here.
Finally, I've said before, we live in a great village, and I felt our duty is to help to make it even better. I feel unfortunately, this is a little bit of a 2016 redux when I got on the board. And I would ask this board to pay attention to what our board did originally and to review a lot of the statements and resolutions that were passed in 2017 to protect the rights and the safety of those who live, work, and visit. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I did want to say, I'm extremely grateful to have been given this opportunity to serve Irvington and its residents. It's been incredibly inspiring to see firsthand the amount of work, love, care, and dedication that goes into making Irvington the very special place it is. From the administration and staff to committees, volunteers, activists, and involved residents. And I did want to thank everyone who's helped me during my first term, especially my fellow board members, I continue to learn so much from you, and I appreciate all of your hard work and dedication for the village and its residents. And of course, I also want to thank the people doing the rural work, Larry, Katie, Marianne, all the department heads, village employees, all the committees, volunteers, too many people to name. But everyone has been extremely helpful and generous with their time, and it's been a great help, so thank you. And I did want to also thank Larry Lonke, this is your last meeting, and as trustee, 4 terms, so thanks for your long service. Everyone probably knows that he was recently received a public service award for having provided unselfish service on behalf of the residents of Westchester County in the interest of recreation, parks, and conservation. It's obviously very well deserved.
Thanks.
I've really been impressed with your focus on listening to all residents and being patient enough to hear different viewpoints, and it's something I've tried to follow. And I've always been interested to hear what you have to say during discussion. You ask thoughtful questions and bring a wealth of experience in serving the village. I know your service isn't over. You've already volunteered to work on the committee, so luckily we'll get more of your time, so thank you.
Okay.
I don't want to waste any of our time. I just want to say, I share everything that John said, and I don't want to like belabor the point, but I think both Larrys will be very sorely missed. I especially just want to point out that Larry Lonke asked questions in discussions that just, I don't know how he thought of them, and he's just, I'm just always impressed. And I just wanted to say to Larry O that I was so impressed with how quickly he came up to speed on all those liaison assignments and just dove in and made it his own. It was a really tough load to take on, and I was just so impressed. And he also asked great questions when we had these discussions, so they're both really sorely missed.
I guess I will say something and I won't call you the Larrys or the both Larrys.
That is one benefit
I
of
know.
this. I no longer have to write a last initial after every time I write Larry
Yeah.
to the board.
Larry's throwing a party.
Yes.
But it's not worth the trade.
Yeah. I think what most people don't know about the board is that, I think no matter if we agree or disagree on things, I think the important thing is to have a community of respect where you can share ideas and kind of challenge each other. And I think, for both of you, you've brought that to the board, and, we've been in agreement, we've been in disagreement, but I think that, sort of what we share is a love of community. And I think that it's important that people that we're so lucky that the two of you chose to serve this community. And so I just want to say thank you. It's been a pleasure. I will miss both of you, your, sort of your thought process and everything that you bring to the board. But, I'm glad that you're going to continue. And I mean, Larry, you're going to continue too. You just don't know yet,
Well put.
Yeah.
Okay. Announcements. The Peter Ollie Turkey Trot is on Sunday, November 24 at 2 p.m. at Dow's Lane. There was a check over $25,000 to Van Bortle Ford for a DPW satellite truck, $79,509. And the Beautification Committee has an announcement that they're seeking new members to help with seasonal planting along Main Street. New volunteers are needed and always welcome. Please reach out to Superintendent Maureen DePauli. I'm not going to read about the committee because you can get that online. And we'll put something out, a reminder in one form or another as an email. Okay, correspondence. The first thing I'm going to do is skip over the first one because they have withdrawn it. Maybe the best thing to do are Sarah or Phil, Michael's in here, okay. So no, not yet, don't get up. What I'm gonna suggest is, I omit this letter and you can speak to your point later. Done. Okay.
Deal's happening fast.
Yeah, I'll take it. All right, let's see. Second letter I covered last meeting. It's from Libby Lando, and it expressed concern about the Broadway and Ardsley Avenue East intersection. And since I covered it, I won't repeat it again, but I will say this, that either today or tomorrow, there's a meeting of the Traffic Calming Committee with the Irving Irvington Police Department. And we'll see what comes out of that. There is I've also had our state representative, Mary Jane Shimsky, inquire at the state level as to what, if anything, can be done, and we'll wait and see what they have to say. Next up is public comment. I'm gonna suggest if you have something to say about the Octagon House, that you wait for the actual hearing for that. Anybody have anything there they wanna say? Okay. Consent agenda, I just have one question and then I'll make a motion to adopt it. The Justice Court report has more cash receipts than fines, which I assume is a timing issue. It's a wonderful problem.
It's timing, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. And they use a different kind of accounting. I assume that's just because that's the rules of the court?
Correct, they're on cash basis,
Okay.
so if the money comes in, it's recorded, and then when it goes out, it's recorded.
Then I'm gonna make a motion to adopt the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next, I am going to open the, actually, let me not wing it, but go to the resolution here.
Is the resolution just opening here?
Yeah, it is opening the hearing, but I just wanna make sure I'm in the right place at the right time. Okay, you're absolutely right. So I'm gonna make a motion to open the hearing regarding the request for renewal of a special permit for adaptive for use of an historic building, 45 West Clinton Avenue, the Octagon House. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, anybody who'd like to speak about this special permit as well?
How about the applicant first, just to give a
Oh,
little,
of course.
little overview and then go from there?
Not a problem.
Yeah.
Come on up. Just as usual, tell us who you are and,
I actually wrote something out. Good evening, Mayor Siegel and trustees. My name is Michael Lombardi, and this is Jessica Lombardi. And my father, Joseph Lombardi, is attending via Zoom. Our family owns the National Historic Landmark Armour Steiner Octagon House at 45 West Clinton Avenue, Irvington, New York. We have been stewards of the property for almost 50 years. My father graduated Irvington High School in the 1950s. In 1978, he acquired the Octagon House, saving it from almost certain demise. He then set out on a 45-year-long conservation effort, restoring the house, grounds, and outbuildings. With him, I have dedicated over 30 years to restoring and conserving every aspect of the Octagon House, property in the interest of preserving it for future generations. I grew up at the Octagon House and have lived on the property with Jessica for the past 15 years. Our son attends Dow's Lane Elementary School. Approximately 5 years ago, we were kindly granted the special permit by the Village of Irvington under the comprehensive zoning resolution to open the house as a historical facility and to offer guided tours by appointment. Jessica and I manage the tours. The guided tours have been very successful in making the house accessible. The direct feedback and reviews we've received reflect the overwhelmingly positive experience of our visitors. Over the past 5 years, we have found tours to be largely a seasonal business, making the broad brush parameters of the 2019 special permit somewhat deficient. We respectfully request that the special permit be renewed with some adjustments to the existing parameters. We would like to increase the capacity of the tours and offer an additional tour per day, allow some additional parking on site, provide additional items for sale. We also propose to occasionally open until 7 p.m. during the busiest months of the year, May, October, and December. As a change to our proposal, in consideration of our immediate neighbors, we respectfully ask to amend the proposal to remove tour buses entirely, and to remove events, that all events must be requested and approved by the board. We greatly appreciate your consideration and the opportunity to open to the public. It's tremendously meaningful for us, our family. And sincerely thank our neighbors and the entire village of Irvington. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I want to very briefly speak on behalf of the Armour-Steiner Octagon House.
Give us your name.
Yes, my name is Elizabeth O'Hanlon, and I came to know the Lombardis while our children were classmates at the Good Shepherd Preschool. Before moving to Irvington with my young family, I spent 12 years working as an administrator at the Museum of Modern Art, and the reasons we moved to this village were very specifically schools, commute, historic architecture, and parks. I will never forget the first moment I discovered a glimpse of pink through the trees along the aqueduct. The home literally took my breath away. The Armour-Steiner Octagon House is on the National Register of Historic Places, and in my opinion, it is our collective duty to support its accessibility to the public. The origins and history of our village should not only be written and told, but also experienced. This house, to me, is a dream come true. The Lombardis are also similarly a dream come true in their impeccable stewardship and commitment to both historic preservation and to this village of Irvington. So thank you, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
You have someone online,
Oh.
one person, whenever you're ready.
How about Chet and then online and then?
Hi, Chet Kerr. I just want to speak on behalf of the effort to try to get this special permit extended. I'm on the Historical Society Board. I've been involved with landmark preservation for a number of years. I'm very interested in history, and I've worked a lot with Mike and his father, and I just think it's a fabulous thing. And this village has so many advantages because somebody has taken hold of that home and preserved it. So I just fully support what they want to do.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, sorry, no, go to Connie. That's
All
fine.
right, go ahead.
No, Connie? Yes,
Then-
Connie.
No, you can go.
Then next.
I had said somebody online, but do your
3
thing.
minutes, please, Connie.
Hello, Connie Kehoe, 19 Jaffrey Park. I'm also speaking in favor of this proposed extension, 5-year extension of their special permit. I was on the board, of course, and thought it was a good idea then. I think it's still a good idea. Just to hear some of the other newer neighbors, newer friends, to also appreciate it. I've been here 47 years, so I have always seen it through the aqueduct, but it just wasn't always pink, and it's been so well cared for. And it's an attraction to so many people to want to come to the village, visit the village. So I think, we have several gems in this village, and this is certainly one of them, and I hope that you support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, online, before I make another mistake.
Hello?
Yes. If you could just give us your name.
Hi, yeah, this is Ann Altman. And I wholeheartedly would agree that the Armour-Steiner House should get the permit it's seeking. I just would ask that it would respect the local law about gas leaf blowers being prohibited, because it's certainly not a historical representation, and it's a local law. So it would make the village and everything a lot more peaceful if they would adhere to the code. And thank you very much.
Thank you. You've been very patient.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Phil Michelson, 61 West Clinton Avenue, immediate neighbors of the Octagon House. My wife and I strongly support an extension of the permit or a renewal of the permit as it was written in 2019. The permit being requested is a meaningful expansion on that permit that would double the capacity of tourists through the town. I appreciate the recent removal of tour buses and of 100-person events. Thank you for pulling those back. We're supportive of expanding. I understand the need to expand. So expanding the tours by 25% from 4 to 5, we support. Expanding the capacity of each tour by 25%, we support. Where we start to have concerns is really the road, West Clinton Avenue, does not have sidewalks in front of the Armour Steiner House, nor down the hill. The road's used to get to the Aqueduct Trail, to get to the schools, to get to the Ardsley on Hudson train station. So it gets dark on that road. From October through March, dusk begins around 4:30. So as far as I can tell, it would be possible to do the expanded 50-minute tours with the desired 40-minute break between tour between the hours of 9:30 and 4:30. The current permit is for 9:30 to 4, so extending to 4:30, I believe, would accommodate the tour growth while still providing for safety of those walking along the road without sidewalks. Thanks again for no buses, that also helps. Thank you for reducing the parking on the street, that also again helps with visibility. So those are the main things that I would like to raise. So again, we support extending the permit, support those expansions, but have some concerns. Oh yeah, the other concern would be, yeah, evenings, which I think I've now stated, and there was a request for evenings, particularly in October and December when it is dark. Overall, the Armour Steiner House is a valuable cultural and historical asset. I feel honored to live next to it. I love to see it. I really want to support it and hope that some modest expansion to the capacity allows for the financial support for the building that allows for it to be in our midst and provide the beauty and history, which is so special to share. And I'm excited to do that. I am supporting expanding it by probably 40% so many more people can enjoy the house. And thank you very much for your stewardship.
Thank you.
Good evening, it's Earl Ferguson. Some may know me as having some concerns for historic preservation around the village over some years. I remember 5-6 years ago, we started writing drafting the local landmarks law, working with Marianne and a committee, as well as Connie and others to get the law established. The Octagon House was the first and yet the only building, a precious historic building here in our village that represents all of the intent of the local landmark law. And I'd like to speak in support of approving the request as it's written. There's a lot of benefit to what we're doing with local landmarks, and especially when a family has so dedicated their lives to preservation of this magnificent building. So if granting the proposal for an expansion is going to help them make the building affordable, allow them to afford to continued preservation, then I think we have to look at their request as written in terms of how it might serve to allow them to continue preserving this wonderful building. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anyone online? No, okay. So let me ask, I guess you and the village attorney, what's the best way to incorporate some of this and maybe keep the hearing open or close it and then have a vote next time if you wanna, or the resolutions as I read them don't, and maybe I didn't read it precisely, don't necessarily reference the tour buses, but I assume it goes back to what was written in the permit.
Right, so the way the resolution was drafted, to be perfectly honest, I took the easiest of the requests and drafted them into the resolution. Again, you're free to do what you want, I was just trying to anticipate.
Yeah.
And what I left out of that resolution was anything specifically related to the tour buses or the special events.
Which now, the tour buses are gone and the events come back to us.
Exactly, so from that standpoint, it was relatively close. What I think you still have an open question about, raised by
Yeah.
a gentleman here during the hearing, is
Volume and time of day.
the hours, right, which is listed as 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., which was tracking what their original request was. And then I think the seasonal tours, particularly October and December, right? Does that capture where the differences are?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the question is, if you need time to ponder that, then leave open the public hearing. If you think you'll get something additional at the next meeting, you can always close the hearing and just not vote on the resolution.
Yeah.
If you need time to think about it, if you want to debate it here, ask additional questions, come up with the final answer, then you can proceed and adopt a resolution.
Well, I have a question for those who are present. Would it make sense where you have differences to give you, I think our next meeting is December 2nd, enough time to have a conversation to see if there's some way you can sort of bridge the gap so that we're not essentially, I hate to use this reference, flipping a coin, to try to come to the best outcome. And if you don't choose to do that, you're the applicant, so it's actually your call. Whether you would want to have a further conversation with the neighbor who has suggested something slightly different than what you proposed, and if not, then we're on the hot seat.
Which is okay.
Yeah, that's why we get paid nothing.
I think we trust your judgment.
Okay, that's fair. Do people want to, so.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question too.
Yeah.
Of the Lombardis, Mr. Michelson seems to have agreed to all of the terms of the extension, except for the hours, 6 o'clock and I guess 7 o'clock on, at certain times. By having those extended hours, you're not really gaining more people, right? Because you're still gonna have 5 tours instead of 4 and 25 instead of 20. So are you saying that what you're gaining simply is an extended amount of time for the same number of people and the same number of tours to access the building?
I think the last tour of the day, maybe I should stand.
Thank you, that way
Just the
people
people at
can
home
hear.
can't hear you unless you're in the microphone.
Thank you.
The last tour of the day would be a little bit of a longer tour, an hour and a half, and we didn't get specific in the revised language to indicate that. I think the other thing is that and in the interest of trying to accommodate our direct neighbor, who's very important to us, and incorporate their interests as well. And not to go back and forth too much on the details of it, but we would be willing to, I think, go to 5 p.m. on regular tour times, with the interest of being able to add this special tour, a 7th tour, which would be, sixth tour during those busy months, meaning that extra hour, that extra period of time until 7 p.m. would be for an additional tour beyond the 5 that we're asking. So it would be a 6th tour. And to get even more specific on it, it would be only 14 people. It would be a half-size tour. So we're trying to kind of land in some sort of compromise that
So
still
there'll be less
fulfills.
people for that tour on a
It would-
theoretically darker street.
It would be less people for
And
the
there'll be
tour.
less people parking on the street because you're offering more parking spots.
To take it even a step further, we will take away all parking on West Clinton, and in fact advocate no parking signs be put up on West Clinton Avenue, because we spend a tremendous amount of time trying to police that ourselves to a certain degree, meaning, and that's why we asked for additional parking on site, because we don't want anybody parking on West Clinton. We feel that that's dangerous in and of itself. It's a narrow street there. It's not good for our neighbors. It's not good for anybody. So again, I think in the interest of the neighborhood, would advocate no parking on West Clinton Avenue.
Thanks for answering that question.
Thank you.
So, that's, go ahead.
No, I think,
Seems like a reasonable compromise, but
well, why don't you let Mary Ann I think Mary Ann wants
go
to
ahead,
talk.
please.
You're muted, Mary Ann.
She's muted.
Yeah, and isn't one other difference in two where it says that there's only, the tours can only be 5 days per week, except October and December, you have the maximum number of days per week shall be 7. I don't know that that was addressed. The hours were addressed, but not the number, not the days in number of days in October and December. And it would be helpful if Mr. Lombardi could address that.
Regular tours throughout the year would be 5 days a week, but we're requesting that 2 weeks out of the year, 2 weeks out of the months of October and December be increased to 7.
Okay,
It's not
that's,
a
okay.
percent increase.
Then the resolution would have to be modified a little bit if you're okay with that.
October, Halloween, and Christmas, New Year's.
So,
Yeah, but that,
go ahead.
no, that's basically what's written there, right?
Yeah, that's what I
No.
see.
Yeah,
Except that the maximum number of days per week shall be 7 during the months of October and December. But it's not. The maximum number of days shall be 7 during 2 weeks in October and 2 weeks in December is what Mr. Lombardi's saying, which is not what's in the resolution.
so,
Which 2 weeks out of the.
The last 2 weeks of
Last.
October, the last 2 weeks of December.
So is the best way to do this, have the resolutions cleaned up, and we can close the hearing? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
I think Anne raised an issue about the gas leaf blowers. I just wanted to make sure, are gas leaf blowers being used on the property?
I just acquired several DeWalt battery-operated leaf blowers. And so that is not, I can guarantee you, given the expense of that investment, that we will no longer be using any gas leaf blowers. I do encourage our neighbors as well to be doing the same. We do have 3¼ acres, so to understand what that requires in terms of leaf blowing, it's a we have to mobilize a huge group of people with rakes and even electric battery-operated. So we respect the legislation fully and we have acquired them, and I, show neighbors and
Yeah,
anybody.
I just want to be clear that we as a village expect that to be followed.
Absolutely.
Absolutely followed, not, it's too difficult to follow it because we did pass it and it went into effect. So whoever isn't doing that is in violation of the law. That's an issue.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a traffic study, but but West Clinton is a pretty heavily traveled road. So I'm wondering the extra cars, is that like, I would love to know if that's a significant, it doesn't seem to me that there'd be a significant change in the traffic flow, just from those cars. I want to address your concerns, but I'm just trying to figure out if that's gonna be, I mean, are you concerned that there's gonna be a significant, because it doesn't seem like we that many cars compared to, like I know every time I pick up my son at his friend's house, I drive down West Clinton, so it's like, it seems like to be like a major road, a few extra cars doesn't seem like it would make that big of a difference. I just wanna make sure I understand your argument.
Sure. It's particularly in the evenings, when the visibility is limited, when the sun's down, particularly for, commuters or kids coming home in the late afternoon, evening. During that time period, the road's actually very quiet. It's really residential at that time, and I think most people who are local don't think of it as a great pass-through road. I have found that when the tours get out at the Octagon House, I'm not sure why, but a number of people do turn left and go kind of towards the river as opposed to going straight back to Broadway. It might be because Google Maps doesn't want people to make left turns, and so if you're going to Main Street, you can avoid a left turn onto Broadway and a left turn onto Main Street by then and you don't have to cross the Aqueduct Trail if you do the left coming out. So I'm not sure why, or people just get lost, or I'm not sure. But I do notice cars coming out of the tour, and so that's why pushing the tour end time back is what I'm most concerned by. Doing it for a week in October, or 2 weeks in October, 2 weeks in December, that don't love, but doing it every day past kind of 4:35, that's where I start to really have concerns.
So I think, I mean, there's a few ways you can proceed. If you want to try to just reconcile and sketch out the terms that you heard tonight, that you think there's agreement on, we can sketch that out. It doesn't have to be a crystal cleaned up copy. You'll see that in the minutes, frankly. Then you could move on this. If you would rather wait and see the whole package in front of you in a nice clean format, then hold off until December 2nd.
Yeah, I mean, my inclination is to see it clean
Me too.
and know what I'm looking at.
Me too. Same.
It also gives you folks the chance to look at what we're about to approve in case you realize, hey, we fouled it up, because it'll be part of the agenda for December 2nd. So I'll make a motion.
Mary.
What,
No, I think
yeah,
Mary-
no, what was the special events, issue resolved?
Subject to,
There's number
Now-
13, because I think Mr. Michelson was saying they didn't want that, and number 3, Larry's, that's a new condition, isn't it? The occasional
Yeah.
seasonal specialty tours?
Yes, it is. And so in all of these conversations, where did we end up on that particular
On
clause?
number 3 and 13, I'm not sure.
can we start
No,
with
thir-
13? I think you're in agreement, which is it has to come back to the board to approve a special event.
Correct.
That's
Okay,
no- no-
everybody-
no
Okay,
change.
they're
that's
not-
not an issue then, 3 is though.
So the current resolution, well, as drafted, the house and grounds may be open for occasional seasonal specialty tours on Friday and Saturday only from 6 PM to 7 PM. Such tours would include book readings and interactive tours in period costume during the months of May, June, October, and December. So how is that being modified?
We're still requesting that.
Well, it's gonna be light in June and probably in May also, right? At that time. October and December would be dark. I'm just saying that out loud.
Yeah, it's okay, and does the, let's see, the occasional seasonal specialty tours, and those tours are also subject to the 2-week limits? In other words, you can only do them, I'm asking, only do them in the 2 weeks in October and the 2 weeks in December that you requested, those specialty tours?
Well, no, they're beyond that because in May and June, John,
No, I understand that, I'm asking about
Okay.
October. Because as Mitch, trustee, sorry.
You can say Mitch, I'm not-
All right, as Mitch suggested, it's light in those other 2 months.
no, I know, but it isn't the hours, John. Right now, it says it's only 5 days a week in May and June. So then it conflicts with, it conflicts with 2.
Well, what are the 5 days, right? That's what, the 5 days you're open, is it Monday through Friday? Is it?
Oh,
Tuesday through
okay, yeah, that's true. It could be Tuesday to
Thursday
Saturday
to
those weeks,
Tuesday.
yeah. Then it would still be 5 days. Yeah, that's a good point.
Where does it
Thursday
take
to
to
Monday.
swing like Yeah, so that, I just assumed that Friday and Saturday were part of the 5 days, right?
Correct.
Okay. I shouldn't have assumed, so I'm glad we asked.
And that evening tour is limited to 14, was that the case?
14 people, correct.
Okay, so we may want to specify that.
And that's the thing you were referring to earlier when you said the last tour being a special tour.
Correct.
I just wanna make sure I'm adding that.
I appreciate that very much.
Okay, so I think I'm gonna, if our village attorney and village administrator are satisfied, I'm gonna close the hearing and we can clean this up and put it on the December 2nd agenda.
Wait, could I ask one other question? When you're talking about the last tour, is it the last tour every day or just the last tour of these specialty tours?
The last tour of the specialty tours.
Just the specialty tours, okay.
Just the specialty tours.
Okay, the specialty tours, so all the specialty tours are limited to 14,
Correct.
okay.
And Mary Ann, in item number 2, we're changing 6 o'clock to 5 o'clock, was that correct?
Yes,
Correct.
yes, I heard that.
I think you want a clean sheet.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I agree. So I'm gonna make a motion to close the public hearing. Second,
Second.
all in favor? Okay, so we'll put this on the December 2nd agenda. Does that have to follow the organizational meeting?
Yes.
So whoever's coming then,
I won't be voting.
yeah, that's right, I understand. But keep in mind, look at the agenda first, because that's our organizational meeting. There's gonna be a lot going on first. So you may wanna inquire at what time, or do it by video. So,
Appreciate that very much.
Or come watch the organizational stuff.
yeah, it's fascinating.
Find out what bank we use and what newspaper we have to advertise in.
7:20. 7:20. That's my prediction.
Oh, you think it'll be that fast?
7:20.
Okay,
Yeah,
oh,
it's
all right.
Well,
It's possible, most
It's
of it's
fast, it's
resolved.
usually like.
We'll see.
if there's anybody who's seen enough meetings to make a good guess, it's Larry Schopper, so.
Right, exactly.
Okay,
Thank you, everybody.
so we're skipping item 9, thank you. And next up is an update on leaf blower usage patterns by Charlotte Vince.
Yeah, that would be good.
Charlotte, while you set up, I will only note that I've at least gotten a couple of, thank you. A couple of complaints from large property owners. Basically what we just heard. Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I understand.
I
It's-
can rebut it from my large property.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have the same, and I have essentially the same property as Woods. So I'm managing,
Yeah, no, I understand,
yeah.
No, I could tell a story about, that I found very instructive.
Larry, can I share my screen?
Mm-hmm, yeah. Well, first I have to promote you as a panelist.
Allow me in, yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, look at those, give a sense of the reports and stuff, and I'll talk you through it.
Hold on one second.
So, don't need to unmute myself, no. So just to set the scene, one of the things that I thought was interesting from my climate vulnerability assessment was that more than 55% of the community is at home. They either work from home or they are stay-at-home parents. And so there's a good chunk of this community who's here at home all day long. And actually, with that, I'm gonna turn over to Chris, who is gonna share some
Positivity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
before we get started on the kind of usage patterns, to kind of take a minute and talk about, now that we're approaching a year, what are some of the reactions of the community? I'm Christine McKenna, by the way. I live on, in the Half Moon Co-op down on Buckout. And I've been involved with the Green Policy Task Force in terms of informing the community about the
If you speak into the mic, people online can hear you.
sorry.
Yeah, if you want to.
About the rationale for the gas leaf blower ban, and also what are some of the consequences for not observing it. I was involved in the effort to distribute leaflets to the community, which explains some of these things. And today I'm just going to spend a moment offering my heartfelt thanks and the heartfelt thanks of many in this community for this ban. Talk a little bit about some of the specific ways people have said that it's improved their life. I teach at CUNY. I teach 50% of my classes at home. Prior to the ban, I literally had to leave my home for 3 months because I just couldn't teach online. Now, not only can I teach online, I can open my windows, no gas fumes pouring in, fantastic. And what's also been really great to observe is our grounds folks' transition to electric has been really, at least from my observation, my observation's really smooth. Our landscape, our property looks great, at least from what I've been able to tell, and I'm home 4 out of 5 days. They've spent less time on the leaves, considerably less time on the leaves. I think it's because the community has met them somewhat halfway, so they're not chasing every leaf in the parking lot. So it's been really fantastic, positive experience. I spoke to other residents, all of which said their families' lives had improved. In terms of children, mothers said their babies could sleep, take naps. One resident, Gloria Leahy, she lives in Irvington Gardens, said her family's life had been tremendously improved. Quote, "I'm able to take my kids to our playground after school instead of staying inside to avoid noise and dust. I love that we don't have to cover our ears because of loud leaf blowers being used at the school bus stop." Post-pandemic, as Charlotte said, more residents are working from home and say the ban has been a big relief. One musician shared that he can now work on his music. Todd Wilson, a resident who worked at home for years, offered his thanks to the Irvington trustees and the village for what he called a bold and trend-setting step that has really made Irvington an even better place to live. He said, "The noise, fuel, exhaust, dust that were part of life several times a day, several times a week are gone." And he adds, his neighbors' lawns and homes have not suffered, at least from his perspective. Lastly, many said that they were able to enjoy nature now across all seasons. Aditi Chang said, "This is the first year since I moved to Irvington that I've been able to keep my windows open through the spring and fall. The breeze, fresh air, bird song have all improved my quality of life greatly. And when I drive through the neighboring villages, it's even more apparent how much cleaner and quieter Irvington has become." So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really been super fun receiving all these testimonials and hearing all this positive feedback from people, and it feels great to be a part of something that's clearly positive momentum. And just to zoom out and look at other municipalities, when we started this, only Larchmont had passed a total ban. Since then, Bedford and Mamaroneck have as well. And 18 other municipalities in Westchester are tightening their seasonal restrictions and very much moving in this direction. So we are ahead of the trend. For the history, Chris mentioned, we handed out 2,500 door hangers, so we're really helping to get the word out. We want to make sure people understand so they don't get in trouble and they're not blindsided. And we have given some to the police to leave at homes where there has been a reported violation. And we tried to do a buyback campaign, that didn't work out, but that's because the grant money wasn't available in the end. We have been getting all this time monthly police reports, which you have in those packets there that you can look at. And also we have an online report on the Irvington Green website, and it's been very interesting to compare those, and that's kind of what I'm going to present to you today. So I will say, when people do both, I'll just skip down to this section is the Google form response. Unfortunately, 39% of people are not calling the police, they're just reporting to us. But when they do both, we have really good intel on what's going on. So I'm just encouraging anyone who's listening to always do both.
And what do you do when they report to you?
I'm collecting it, and then, periodically we review it, and then we have something to discuss.
When they call in, do you ask who their landscaper is?
Absolutely. We ask for the name of the company, time, place, all the details, documentation. We have a lot of.
That might be a way to shortcut this, right? Because obviously the landscaper's going to be going from.
100%.
Just to notify the landscaper.
Oh, there are some very clear patterns that could be nipped in the bud, for sure. So conclusions, people still remain reluctant to call the police, as you saw from that stat. They don't want to call on their neighbors. Sometimes they have called and been asked a lot of questions like their date of birth, why is that necessary? It's kind of intimidating. It can be, so I've also heard wonderful phone calls, but maybe it could be like established that from the get-go that they can be anonymous if they want. They don't have to answer all these questions because they start to feel like they're the one who's, in violation. So that would be one request or suggestion. And then the thing that's become apparent to me looking at all this is that I'm not clear, this is why I was kind of hoping Frank would be here, I'd love to have a conversation, to understand more clearly what the exact process is. So so I was originally getting these kinds of reports from the police, which is very high level, how many complaints, how many incidents issued a summons, how many were unfounded. And I asked for more detail, so you can see here in October, a lot more detail, which is very helpful. Yeah, you're up there, yeah. So one of the things that have become apparent to me through this is, why, so for October, 18 unfounded calls, only 2 summons issued.
Meaning that
7
it's
warnings
possible
issued.
that the user of the leaf blower was gone at that point?
So typically, there's a number of things. The thing that most people have observed most often, which the landscapers, some of them, have figured out is that they can just switch. The police have to see them actually holding the gas leak blower, and in fact, I had a personal experience with this, where I saw a gas leak blower in use, and I said, just so you know, you can't use that. And he said, I don't care. And I said, you're forcing me to call the police. And he said, I don't care. So I called the police, and I filmed him using the gas leak blower, and the police arrived, and he put it down and picked up an electric one just as the police was pulling up, and the police said, unfounded, can't do anything about it. And I said, but I have a video. And they said, that doesn't matter. They have to see it with their own eyes. So they kind of know this, right? Like they can just, you see them sitting on the back of the truck.
Yeah.
And to be fair with the landscapers, like every village having different laws is complicated, right? They have to have both equipment, or they, you know, a lot of them are going to have both equipment for that reason. But there is this way to game the system right now, which is unfortunate. I wonder, is that absolutely necessary that the police have to witness it if you have video proof right there and then? You know, and then the other thing that I think is happening a lot is, you know, if the homeowner's not home, they don't get the citation. Like, I don't know from the summons how many are going to the worker, how many are going to the employer, and how many are going to the homeowner. You know, it might be that it's still just going to the workers. I don't know. You know, I think when my understanding from talking to the police is if the homeowner's not there, that they're not even necessarily notified. And I used to have a landscaper. When I first moved here, I was trying to get him to use electric, and every time I came home, he was back on gas. And I was like, stop it. Brian Smith said the same thing. So, you know, that, like, it could be very embarrassing to realize that you had 5 reports on your house and you don't even know, right? Like, so I want to make sure that we're communicating effectively with the homeowners so that they can be aware that if they're in violation, because they might not know themselves.
I just want to say something there. I think when we talked about this ban and the summons, I think it's very important to me, and I think it was to other people. I think it's wildly unfair that we just are ticketing the workers. You know, again, I think at one of the hearings, we heard one of the landscape company owners basically say he wasn't, maybe pay for it once and not another time. So I think from my perspective, I guess from an equity perspective, I'm concerned that the burden is on the workers. And so I do think it's important to get more information on what those summonses are. And I thought we made some changes to make sure that the homeowner, because I think the person who's going to be the most effective in curtailing the violation is going to be the homeowner, right? I think you had that, I had that experience too. Like, I think my landscaper, more than anything, remembered the ban on the timing, and I was like, what are you doing? And we have electric, right? So at my house, they use our equipment, but I think they just forgot, like, that the ban, you know, was that the timing was like fine. But I do think unless this is going to be like notifying the homeowner, you know, one thing is to issue like a warning to a homeowner if they see the worker, and then the next time it is incumbent upon the homeowner, like to make sure that people who are working on your house are following the law, period, in my opinion. So I think I think there's a implementation sort of, it sounds like, problem.
Yeah, and tracking, like, you know, why are people getting warnings, and when and why are people getting summons? Is it being tracked that people have been warned once? You know, and when a landscaping company gets a multiple summons, at what point do they lose their license? You know, I mean, so I just wanted a really clear articulation of what this process is, and yeah, and a lot of, I mean, some of the unfounded calls are reported otherwise, like 7 or 8 times for the same location, with evidence. So there are some issues that are not being enforced. There are some places where it's not being enforced systematically.
So it's something we definitely have to look
Yeah, I think
into.
that's something we have to address and look at.
So more data would be great. I would love to create a leaflet, if everybody agrees, that we can give the police to let the homeowner know, somebody reported your house for gas leak blower, here's the law, you should be aware, right? And really clear, like, okay, so maybe we're doing a warning for the first time. If we're still doing warnings at this stage, you know, who's gotten a warning? When do we switch over to summons? And when we give a summons, I think you're right, Arlene, we need to make sure it's 3 summons every time. So there's only 2 issued for October. You know, there should be 3 for every time there's 1 summons.
I mean, I think we talked about that, right? I think we talked about the effectiveness of summons and you know, how I think not only ineffective, but wildly, in my opinion, wildly unfair to ticket the person who has no power in that situation. So, yeah.
Yeah. So those are my main points. Lisa or anyone else, do you guys want to say anything else? And you know, this data is interesting if you want to look at it, but I'll leave that with you.
You started to have a comment before, did you want it?
Well, I just don't think our Google form asked for the landscaping.
I do.
The name? of
Yeah.
the landscape?
Don't we? You're saying
I put it in. Oh, you changed it, okay.
it's definitely in the data. Maybe you could. Okay. Yeah, I think it is. But if it's not, I will definitely correct that.
So Charlotte, the takeaway is basically though that this has been very successful.
Yes.
And that there's been a tremendous improvement in quality of life for residents.
Yes.
And that we should, you try to do a better job and ask
Yeah,
our police
there's just some
on top
first
of
year
what they're
process
doing to us.
evolution. Absolutely right. Thank you. That's a good way to
Right, because I don't want to get bogged down in
Yeah.
the same thing that we've been getting bogged down
Yeah,
in when we've had a tremendous improvement.
Absolutely.
in
Completely
quality
agree.
of life.
And so I think there's some concrete suggestions there for how to make sure we understand who's at what stage of this process and how to make sure that the homeowner and the home company owner are properly informed.
Right, I think, to go on what Larry said, when we had that meeting, it was a work session where we had to decide whether we were gonna take action or let it go into effect. And I remember, I think people agreed with me, I hope so, when I said that, Larchmont's done this, and last time I checked, Larchmont was still there.
Yeah.
So that, all of these stories of horror stories of what was gonna happen, I think it's safe to say a year later that the horror stories did not come true.
Right.
And our village is still in one piece.
Oh, and a
and-
lot of people are really happy.
Yeah, and I had a personal experience lately where, just to show, I think, how this shows how this works, was was literally 5 minutes about to go onto a meeting. I work at home 1 or 2 days a week. And all of a sudden I heard the very unfamiliar sound of a gas leak blower. I hadn't heard one, so it jarred me. And I texted the super and I was like, tell him that he can get fined, his boss can get fined, and we can get fined. And it stopped immediately. And then the super texted me back and said, he said he was using it because the leaves were wet. And I wrote back and I said, there's no wet leaves.
Yeah, we're in a drought.
It's actually in the code.
Using wet leaves.
Yeah, and he said the electric doesn't work on the wet leaves. I was like, I don't care. I said, and I'm on the board at my co-op, that's why I'm involved in this. And sure enough, 2 days later, they came back with electric leaf blowers and cleared it off, and the world didn't come to an end, and we waited 2 days. I was skeptical then, and I'm skeptical now that there's any real drawback to doing this.
If you can collect the data on the businesses that are doing this, maybe the village can write letters to them.
Yes.
Doesn't have to, we can just say, here's the law.
Yeah.
You really ought to comply with it or you're gonna get a ticket.
Yeah, and there are a couple who maybe just are not going to, maybe they lose their license.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
really continue to.
That's not in the code, but
Okay.
having put them on notice, the fines can accumulate,
Yeah, okay.
so.
Yeah, I guess, and then the other thought is, I do think it's important, right, when we're trying to implement policy that we've changed code. I think it's important that Charlotte meet with Frank to kind of figure out, like, maybe going through the report and like working together to see like what things can be implemented to change it. And I'm especially interested in, again, gonna beat this, but like, it really hits me the wrong way that the summonses are to the workers only. So I agree that it should, every time, there should be the worker, the company, the homeowner gets a warning, and then the next time you really are in the best position to deal with that, right? And it's happened to me.
What do you think about the fact that the police have to witness it with their eyes, even though there's a video right there? Is that just the law? What is that?
It's an evidentiary issue, I think.
He's working on a way of having a summons issued, but with the supporting deposition of someone who witnessed it.
Right.
But then that person's got to be willing to
Come in and testify.
come in,
Yeah.
testify, write a sworn testimony and all that. So he's got to work through the details on that, but it would offer another avenue, but it's not going to be as simple as I saw it, so give him a ticket.
Sure, I understand that.
That's okay.
Yeah, at least there's an avenue there. It's really just for the ones who are like, I don't care, then you want to say, well. Yeah.
Is it on this thing? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Just a quick comment, because Mitch brought it up. this issue of the equipment not being up to what a gas leaf blower does is a false flag. Originally, 2 years ago, that was the case. I'm a bit of an equipment gearhead. The new stuff that is out now is equally as compatible with a gas leaf blower. So these people making comments that, oh, I need to use gas because the leaves are lead or something, you don't. If you have the current equipment available, the village does. I had the pleasure of using one of the still backpack blowers that the village has 2 weeks ago, and I was shocked.
I mean, that's great, but I think the point is if people are gonna say that, it's not an excuse, even if they.
Exactly, I agree with you, it's not an excuse, but it is a false flag.
And the consequences were they came back 2 days later and did it.
Exactly, so that is the case. I will also make one other quick side note. I had the pleasure of walking down Broadway from Tarrytown to Irvington last week, and as I walked by Belvedere, the groundskeepers at Belvedere were cleaning the leaves off the sidewalk from Broadway to their stone wall, all with a rake. No leaf blower at all. They just use a rake and a bucket, and that was it. And they have a large property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else, Ron? Thank you very much.
So how do we follow up like with,
Well,
on this enforcement?
it seems to me that you
I'll
said the
get the two
chief, yeah,
together
so
and
the
we'll-
chief is, and,
We'll verify all the data.
yeah. All right, shall we move on? Thank you, appreciate it. Discussion, next up is discussion about use of NYSERDA grant funding and maybe commitment to providing matching funds for the senior center solar project, which are actually related. So I'm gonna try to do this and using your information, you can correct me as I go. So the grant, this NYSERDA grant outlined certain expenditures. And Chris Lando, if you're out there, this is the time to be listening. Since I let them know that this was something they were interested in. And they ought to either see this now or at a later point in time. So the grant request is I'm gonna round these off to the nearest thousand, 134,000. Our local match, which I assume means that Irvington has to put this up, is 134,000. Federal investment tax credits are 150,000, and the New York Sun is $82,000. Total cost is about $500,000. And what we expect, and again, this is all for the purposes of submitting a grant, so they are estimated, but we expect that savings would be about $9,800 a year. So if Irvington's contribution to this is $134,000, then the payback is in under 14 years. What we are about to discuss is the possibility that New York doesn't give us that $82,000, and we have to be willing to step up to the plate for that. If that should happen, would it be fair to say we don't expect that to happen, but we need to be in a position to tell the folks who would issue the NYSERDA or the CDBG grant?
Right.
That will pony up the money if it's not available.
Right, first of all, I think there's two things that are, NYSERDA and the senior center solar grant are not related.
Sorry.
So there's two
Got
things
it.
that are
Okay.
conflated, so for the senior center.
I knew it had to be corrected.
That's all right.
That's why Larry's there, right?
No, you're good, but what you outlined is correct for the senior center.
Yeah.
I was just expecting you to roll into the NYSERDA grant question, which is the first on the agenda.
Got it.
So the senior center is contemplating the use of New York Sun solar tax credits. The New York Sun program is in its third tranche out of 3 in terms of how much money they have approved. I believe that's what I heard the case was. So those credits are apparently being used pretty quickly. So that's why Westchester County raised the question and said, should this go away, would you still fund it? or would you still do the project?
Got it.
So that's
So
really the question.
if it goes away, it pushes the payback to 22 years.
Correct.
Which is still especially if you factor in the environmental benefits, which is not at all in these costs.
Right.
It is still under what you might deal with on a residential basis. So I would be, even on these numbers, I would be in favor of doing this project. Just so that make sure I'm not totally confused. I thought these grants would be for the senior center installation. Am I wrong about that?
So the
Item 12.
item 12 is the only thing that's related to the senior center and has nothing to do with NYSERDA.
But
The NYSERDA grant funding is totally separate funding that your sustainability director obtained.
got it, fine, I'm sorry.
And we
Got
need to
it.
figure out what to spend it on.
Okay,
One of the items is probably not the senior center, because that would really be
understood,
too confusing at this point.
understood.
Right.
And you had made prior recommendations about that, which you're gonna refresh my memory on. I guess it was the
Well,
heat
let's,
pumps.
can we do one
Yes,
thing?
we can
I'm
do
sorry, I don't
one
mean
thing
to,
at a time.
it's just that there's
Take 11, I sure.
lots of moving parts
Take
here, so,
11.
do you want to finish up the senior center conversation?
All right,
Yeah.
I'll do it.
Okay, so that, I mean, that's the question at hand, is we're
Will
not.
we put up the $82,000 if we can't, if it's not available?
Right, and again, the nature of a resolution like this is that you're not committing, until you sign a contract with someone, you're not committing with absolute inability to get out of the commitment. You're making the commitment at this point in time so that Westchester County is more comfortable about their decision. Should they award the grant, and should the New York Sun credit go away, and should a future board decide that you no longer want to do the project, you're welcome to do that. You know what I mean? I would hope it doesn't happen that way, but it's
Can I
possible.
say that a little bit differently?
Yeah.
That what we're really saying is we're committed to this because we've talked about it and we're committed to this project. That we understand the funding might go away, but even if that happened, we are still committing to put in that other piece. And understanding that there could be some unforeseen circumstances that some future board could change their mind, but we today are fully
Yes.
committed.
That's all you can do is resolve for
Correct.
today. Yep.
And also, just to add something I think you've said in the past, if we've moved forward and we were to sort of back out of a grant that's being offered to us, it's probably not creating a good precedent with respect to applying to that same entity for future grants.
Right, I mean, that's an intangible goodwill, but again, that's part of the decision-making process in the future, should it happen that way.
And this is also assuming we get the grant money, which is great. It's still grant money. We just don't get all the money we could possibly get, but
Right.
it's still beneficial.
Exactly, yep. But
And
look,
I
there's
just wanna
there's lots of things that can happen. I mean,
Yeah.
the other item that's in this plan is a reliance on federal tax credits. Well,
Yeah.
we know things
There
can
will be
change on
some
that level,
changes,
and that'll
yeah.
be a different decision that this board will have to
Yes.
make.
Okay.
But Westchester County is not asking you for your opinion on that particular credit.
Got it,
We're only asking about the New York Sun credit.
okay. So,
I just want to know one thing, is that, like, obviously, as a board, it is absolutely our responsibility to look at the finances and make sure that it's a fiscally smart decision. I want to make clear that I don't think it's only a fiscal decision. When you're talking about something like this, we're in the middle of a climate crisis, and I think it's incumbent on any organization to do what it can to try and limit the use of fuel that's going to contribute to the carbon problem. And if we have an opportunity to do that, obviously, if it was gonna add costs and, and bloat the budget, then of course, that's something we couldn't do. But knowing it's within the parameters that John laid out and everything, I think it's not just that it's financially prudent, but beyond that, it's, I think, an important decision that every entity that has the ability to do this should be doing.
so can I make a motion? On the matching funds for the senior center solar project. So the motion is, whereas the Board of Trustees has applied for a grant seeking funding from the Community Development Block Grant Program to fund the installation of solar panels on the roof of the senior center and a canopy over the parking lot. And whereas the application included the acquisition of up to $82,020 of New York Sun solar incentives. And whereas the availability of New York Sun solar incentives are subject to discretionary funding from New York State, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees confirms its commitment to proceed with the senior center solar panel project, even if New York Sun solar incentives become unavailable. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I think my total confusion about NYSERDA and the senior center, solar center is because they're in the same heading of the email that I have been looking at on this particular subject, but.
Right, I did notice that, and
Having said that.
That's fine.
I defer to you to tell me what I need to know about NYSERDA.
okay, well, we also, yeah, so, as we had, I know, discussed and was announced, there's been a significant amount of funding that was obtained from NYSERDA, or has been awarded or earmarked, I'm not sure what the right terminology is, by NYSERDA, and that amount of funding is in excess of $400,000, 420, it might have even gone up since my last email. Exactly, so say between 425 and 450,000. So that money, a good portion of that needs to be applied for by December 6th. A little bit extra December 9th, and then there's another date in January. But if we don't apply for it, we lose it, and we know that for certain. In fact, there's even questions about whether they'll still have enough money if we wait to the last minute on this one, but we're doing the best we can with it. So the question is, what is this money used for? What I believe I had outlined for the board, and I think, and I'm asking for Charlotte to weigh in as well, is to try to best allocate that money to get the most bang for the buck, the largest reduction of emissions, whatever unit of measure you want to use, but to do so in as quick a way as possible so that we don't jeopardize this funding. Again, December 6th is really only effectively a couple of weeks away with the holiday and all that in between. So that's the issue. What I outlined, and again, this was just my recommendation, we want to explore whatever other options there are to explore. My suggestion was that the funding be used in two ways. The first being a relatively small amount of it, I don't know a number, but let's say between 30 and 50,000 of it may be used for building energy audits for all of the buildings for which we have not done building energy audits, which means everything other than town hall. We did a recent one in the last couple of years, but we have not looked at any of our other buildings. And that would yield, potential energy savings projects would be identified from that audit. So that's a small component. The larger component, to be honest with you, it's difficult to find a project that's that large, one single project. The one project we did identify is the electrification of the HVAC system in this building for one additional floor of this building. So we have, the theater, of course, is already done. And we've estimated, with probably some conservatism, $500,000 per floor to switch this building off of fossil fuel over to an electric heat pump system. So that's really where I landed on a recommendation. We talked about solar opportunities, and I think those options are limited. The DPW is actually a pretty prime candidate, but I think that would be unwise at this point, given this level of study for that facility and the potential for that to move.
So given your.
I know vehicles are on all of our minds because they're a larger contributor. So Charlotte, I don't know if you want to chime in on all this. I don't mean to be driving the whole conversation.
I'll say the three of us spoke today, and I think we've already kind of agreed, but I just would love to share with you what John has done. If I can share
Can I
again.
ask you a question while she's bringing that up? The numbers you just described would mean you're asking the village to bridge the gap between the grants, so it's, I don't know, what, 120 grand or something, 130 grand?
Yeah, based on the estimates, yes.
Would that be like a capital project for the capital budget?
Yeah, although it's small enough where we probably can fund it outside of the capital budget, to be honest with you. And we haven't talked about the details internally yet.
Okay.
But I think it's.
Sorry, it's a good project.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead.
So just having done the greenhouse gas emissions inventory for the village and having, and I'll introduce John in a second, but having a really clear sense on what is most egregious, it's been an amazing exercise, but I also have witnessed this incredible department having to manage the annoying parameters of all grants, like it has to be in this window of time and for only these particular projects, which doesn't always line up with the reality of what you can do. So I understand that that's tricky, but I do want to introduce John, who is our latest GPTF volunteer, retired engineer, data wizard, who, scientist. Oh, sorry. Here. Who can maybe talk you through a little bit what he's done here. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, good evening, everybody. Yeah, as Charlotte said, my name's John Cossins. I live on South Cottonnet. I'm a relatively recent resident of Irvington. Moved here about 5 years ago. And I'd just like to say I've lived in 7 countries and 5 states and many cities, and this is a really delightful place to live, so I'm very pleased to be here. As Charlotte says, I'm really data-driven, so I started just in the recent weeks to get involved in this project. And the first thing I wanted to do was to find a quick and simple way to visualize the data. Also, the data is very complex. There are lots of assumptions in it. I wanted to go through and make sure I really understood that data before we went any further. So this is a visualization of the 2019 baseline report that Larry put together. And there are basically, and Sharps.
Yes, mostly Charlotte.
Okay, we're even now. So there are 5 categories: vehicle fleet, buildings and facilities, employee commute, streetlights, traffic signals, and wastewater. Then in the horizontal axis, there are 5 sources of carbon dioxide emissions: gasoline, heating oil, diesel, natural gas, and electricity. And they're color-coded according to their size. And by far the biggest is the vehicle fleet, but bear in mind that this was taken in 2019, and since then there's been a great deal of improvement of the vehicle fleet. The next task I have is to get all of those improvements into the 2023 sheet down the bottom, which is in the process of being updated. So we'll have a snapshot of 2019, a snapshot for the last full calendar year, and then we'll have another sheet for exactly the same parameters for the future. And at the bottom, there'll be a reduction compared to the baseline and a reduction compared to the prior year. So that way we all have something that's very simple and easy to use that allows us to focus in on what's advantageous. And immediately, if we talk about this building, I can make an estimate that would reduce our carbon footprint by about 1.5% based on the information I have so far. It needs refining. It might be 0.5% either side of that. But that's the goal, is to be able to put this in front of everybody and say, okay, if we do this, if we spend $500,000, that's the benefit we get. So.
It enables us to model going forward for our strategy. Currently our climate plan says 50% of fleet and 50% of buildings by 2030, but what does that mean? What's the actual roadmap? So this is helpful to get more specific in what, where, how, why, when. But you can see the biggest thing is fleet by far. So that's why we raised this today with Larry. Can we revisit the fleet? And I know we've already talked about it, and a lot of the cars have already been upgraded, and some of them are just, the big diesel trucks are preposterously expensive to upgrade to EVs. But I just encourage us to keep looking at opportunities to reduce our fleet emissions, because it's by far, it's 46%? 46% for overall emissions for the village.
Given the fact that the vehicles tend to roll over cyclically, that would seem to me a good candidate to do within capital budget. I mean, if we get grants, that's fantastic, and you can accelerate it a little bit, but I don't know how you would right now spend whatever it is, $400,000 on swapping vehicles. So that's, and I know you guys discussed already and sort of came to agreement, but.
Right. But I think the bigger issue is, we've been making a concerted effort, and as you know, there's a policy. I've said it 1,000 times. Every time we buy a vehicle, I think I repeat the policy. We look at every single purchase that we make, and we determine, is there an electric version of this that is available in the marketplace, OEM, that's serviceable locally, that has fuel available? I mean, electric's obviously available, but hydrogen wouldn't be, and as example, and then is the electric vehicle suitable for a particular purpose. So that, I think, is what trips us up mostly. For example, we have a large fleet of diesel-powered dump trucks, 10-wheel dump trucks, smaller, mid-sized ones, smaller ones. They're all used for plowing. What do I do with an electric vehicle and plowing? You're certainly not going to get the range that's, estimated. And then when the range runs out, what do I do? So it's, those are challenges. It means that you may have to have multiple of vehicles as redundancy, as backup, to swap out a vehicle, not just bringing something in for charging. So it's complicated, and that's why we haven't started on where a lot of those emissions are probably generated from, are those larger trucks, and we just haven't gotten to a point where we can replace those. So, but we have done what we can do, and that is our, what I would call passenger fleet, the building inspector, superintendent of recreation, superintendent of public works, general foreman. Those are vehicles that don't do plowing, that clearly can operate on electric. And as you mentioned, we've parking enforcement. So we had 2 electric vehicles probably when this was, the last inventory was done in 2019. We now have 8. So those have to be reflected in the numbers, and we'll get that data for you. So are there more after that? There might be 1. I'm not sure. We've got to make sure that it'll fit the purpose. There could be an opportunity in the water department for a vehicle that they use. It's a utility vehicle. I'm not sure about that one. It was recently replaced, like within the last 4 years, so it's not that old. So little opportunities here and there. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near what we need to spend to qualify for this grant. That's the first thing.
If there's one car.
Yeah, but and again, I don't think we have anything that's ready to be upgraded. I think,
And the timing is also sensitive.
right. So, and these things still take time.
So that takes us back to town hall, is that what we're saying?
Well, I don't know.
Well, just to another topic, just quickly on the fleet, I mean, it's not relevant to the grant, but, when we did an analysis of our municipality compared to other municipalities, our fleet was significantly larger. So right sizing is something that we can look at, where can we have just less? There's no money for that, unfortunately. But, that's something else to look at longer term. And then,
Sorry, Charlotte, you guys do you have those comparisons of
yeah,
how?
I do.
Okay, of like what our fleets are like
Yeah.
and our vehicle usage versus others?
Our emissions from fleet compared to other municipalities with a similar population.
Okay.
Yeah, we have more.
Can you share that?
Sure. And then the other thing is landscaping equipment, which we've already done the handheld stuff, but there's ride-on things that we can upgrade, but Larry was saying, you can say.
Yeah, so we do have plans to upgrade our park maintenance equipment, especially the large ride-on tractors, now that those are available pretty commonly, and they're pretty effective. The problem is we don't have the charging facilities in order to charge all of these much larger batteries. Our plan was, in the parks that is. So our plan is now that we're bringing power to the storage building in Matheson Park, that we're going to use part of that added service for the stage to be used as powering for a charging facility. And at that point, then we should have the ability to switch over that department. Hopefully there'll be some grant funding available for that in the future, but at this point, it's not quite there. I mean, one possible, as we're talking here, one possibility is if you feel like there should be a purchase of those vehicles, but we wouldn't be able to use them, of those pieces of equipment, we wouldn't be able to use them for
Just to park
probably,
until we have the infrastructure.
until we have the
And that
infrastructure in
depends on the
place.
stage, which is what kind of timing are we talking about?
Well, the power should be in place probably by the spring.
Well, maybe that's justified.
Could be a possibility. But then that takes away from what you want to do here in Town Hall, so it's just a matter of,
But it's a small piece.
yeah, relatively small, yeah. So that may be a possibility.
Well, since there's a cash portion, even if you selected Village Hall and the other small piece that you described, it doesn't matter if I spend the cash on that other project. It makes this grant application simpler, which is something you presumably, which you have to get in rapidly. So it doesn't mean we can't do this other thing that's been described, it just means we're gonna spend the cash.
And maybe I'm looking, if I'm agreeing with you, but it also means like if we wanna spend X number of dollars and we're getting a grant for Y number of dollars, in the end, it doesn't matter which part of that X number of dollars the Y is going to, so the question then becomes what you just said, the most efficient. It sounds to me like the plan in Village Hall, which would cover a big chunk of it, is a really relatively simple, I don't mean to
No, it is.
relatively simple.
No, but it's one component.
Right, rather than, and then it doesn't mean we can't do the other piece of it, it just means that where are we gonna put the money?
And it may be more compelling to somebody who's looking at it and making an analysis about a grant.
That too.
You're gonna change the nature of the heating in a big chunk of this building. We've already done a big chunk of it already in the theater.
And Larry's already done a lot of work to put this together for a prior grant application, so.
Oh, yeah.
Thank
I mean, that's how I look at it, because if we are thinking that we're gonna spend this money anyway, then it just becomes it's like if a family is going to wants to get an electric car and they wanna put a solar on their roof, and that's gonna cost a total of $250,000 and they get a grant for $100,000, it doesn't matter if it's for the car or if it's the roof, right? Because either way, you're just gonna have to pay another $150,000.
Well, it does for the application.
Yes, that's my point, so that's where I was going towards, so
Yeah.
if that's the case, then we should choose the thing that's the easiest.
And by the way, the other ideas that are out there, like the electric equipment in the parks, I think there are other opportunities for grants in those areas, especially through our local legislators. Those are perfectly sized projects
Yeah.
that our legislators can get behind. So those are the types of things that we can still continue on those fronts. Or even a particular vehicle, for example, if we spot a vehicle that's really ripe for replacement, then, we can seek out funding at that point.
So you,
I think we came to the same conclusion, but we kind of wanted to walk you through some of our
No,
thinking and all
I'm
this
glad you
background
did.
work and other perspectives as to
well,
get to that
you've
conclusion.
laid the groundwork for what you're gonna ask for next, so that's okay.
What else we're looking at?
That's fine. So presumably you don't need anything from us other than a nod that says that seems like a smart idea, go do it.
That's it.
Okay.
Yep.
You got it. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for putting those graphics, are very helpful to.
Yeah,
thank you, John.
Yeah.
And thank you for crunching the data.
I just want to say, I missed it earlier, just thank you so much for your service. Having done community organizing across the state, I've developed so much appreciation for you stewards who put in so much volunteer time, like it can often be a thankless job, and I am so thankful. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks, Charlotte.
thank you. Let's see here. Pro-housing communities resolution. We've already discussed sort of the background and how we can go about achieving each of these things, so I'm not gonna relitigate that unless you want me to. I know you always enjoy when I belabor a point. Unless there are questions about the pro-housing communities pledge, I'm gonna offer up the resolution. So motion is,
Before you say that, I just want to say something, I just want to make the point because I've had this conversation with several people and I asked it in our internal communications. But this housing resolution is to be adopted as is. It's not one of the ones that we can mark up and change. I think
Correct.
It's important to say that.
and we did look, and of the sort of 5 items, 5 steps that they want us to take, we did look at each one and see either how we have done it or how we plan to do it. So we will sort of keep a running mental checklist of that. So the resolution is, whereas the Village of Irvington, hereinafter local government, believes that the lack of housing for the New York residents of all ages and income levels negatively impacts the future of New York State's economic growth and community well-being. Whereas the housing crisis has negative effects at regional and local levels, we believe that every community must do their part to contribute to housing growth and benefit from the positive impacts a healthy housing market brings to communities. Whereas we believe that supporting housing production of all kinds in our community will bring multiple benefits, including increasing housing access and choices for current and future residents, providing integrated, accessible housing options that meet the needs of people with sensory and mobility disabilities, bringing economic opportunities and vitality to our communities, and allowing workers at all levels to improve their quality of life through living closer to their employment opportunities. Whereas we believe that evidence showing that infill development that reduces sprawl and supports walkable communities has significant environmental and public health benefits. And whereas we believe that affirmatively furthering fair housing and reducing segregation is not only required by law, but is essential for keeping our community strong and vibrant. Now therefore, it is hereby resolved that the Village of Irvington, in order to take positive steps to alleviate the housing crisis, adopts the Pro-Housing Communities Pledge, which will have us endeavor to take the following important steps. 1, streamlining permitting for multifamily housing, affordable housing, accessible housing, accessory dwelling units, and supportive housing. 2, adopting policies that affirmatively and further fair housing. 3, incorporating regional housing needs into planning decisions. 4, increasing development capacity for residential uses. 5, enacting policies that encourage a broad range of housing development, including multifamily housing, affordable housing, accessible housing, accessory dwelling units, and supportive housing. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next up is support of continued and increased state aid for local governments. And Larry, refresh my memory, this came from
Nikon.
Nikon, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about this? It's basically a plea for the state to continue their unrestricted state aid to local communities. No questions? Then I will start reading. My motion is, whereas until 2024, cities, villages, and towns had not received an increase in unrestricted state aid, AIM funding, in 15 years, significantly impacting their ability to provide essential services to their residents. And whereas after a prolonged period without financial support, local governments finally received an increase of $50 million in unrestricted state aid. And whereas local officials expressed their gratitude for the $50 million increase in unrestricted state aid, recognizing it as a positive step towards addressing longstanding funding challenges. And whereas the state has referred to this new aid as temporary municipal assistance, suggesting that such increase may not continue, jeopardizing the sustainability of crucial municipal programs and services. And whereas the property tax cap further limits the ability of local governments to properly fund the programs and services their residents need. And whereas increased and ongoing state aid for local governments is vital for maintaining infrastructure, public safety, housing, and other municipal services. And whereas the challenges of inflation, the increasing costs of labor and supplies, and the end of extraordinary federal aid only accentuate the need for consistent and predictable funding to effectively plan for the future and meet the growing needs of their residents. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village of Irvington calls upon the governor and the state legislature to commit to continuing the additional $50 million in unrestricted state aid in the 2025-26 state budget and beyond. And be it further resolved, the Village of Irvington urges state officials to recognize that the need for a long-term plan that ensures consistent and predictable increases in financial support for local governments that keep pace with inflation. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next up is authorizing a tax cert settlement with Woodbrook Gardens Corp.
So I have to abstain on this.
Okay. Do you want to, Larry, say anything about, or, sorry, Clerk Treasurer, you want to say anything?
So this is similar to all the other tax certs we have. It gets reviewed by Ed Lammers in the village attorney's office. And this year's budget, we have $150,000 set aside for tax certs, so this falls within that.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? Okay, I will read through this. Whereas petitions have been filed by Woodbrook Gardens Corp. Here and after petitioner challenging real property tax assessments on the village's assessment roll with respect to the subject property for 2022 through 2023 assessment years. And then it identifies the property owner as Woodbrook Gardens Corp. And provides a property description and the years of 2022 and 2023. Whereas petitioner's actions are now pending in Supreme Court, Westchester County. Whereas the town and petitioner have reached mutually agreeable resolution. Are we defined as the town? Is that town referring to Greenberg or is that us?
Yes.
Okay.
Their taxes, that's right.
Okay, fine.
I know about it from the other side.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, well, I appreciate the advice.
Yes, like he said.
Okay, fine. I don't know whether we need to tweak it a little, but it's good enough. Whereas the town and petitioner have reached a mutually agreeable resolution, now therefore, the office of the village attorney is authorized to effectuate a settlement commensurate with the following terms. In 2022, the original assessment was $15,235,900. The revised assessment is $13,250,000. It's a $1.985 million roughly reduction. And in 2023, the original assessment was $16,959,800. And the revised assessment is $13,567,840. And the reduction is $3,391,960. And the Village of Irvington share of the refund is $41,899.40. Do I have a second other than Mitch?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstaining?
Yeah, so I guess to explain, I am a shareholder of Woodward
Yeah.
Gardens, I live there, so it would be inappropriate for me to vote on this.
No problem, makes sense. Okay.
What are you doing with the 41,000?
Big party.
That would be inappropriate.
Yeah, that's right.
It would be inappropriate to talk about that too.
You're on that board also.
That's why I said, would you like to know?
Problems everywhere. Okay, reports of board standing committees and officers, trustee liaison.
I have a short report from Ed in the building department. They continue to be busy with applications. They're slowly getting the new computer system to work with Greenberg. They've issued 730 permits this calendar year.
Thank you.
Other than just a reminder of the Peter Oley Turkey Trot this Sunday, November 24th, 2 p.m. at Dow's Lane. That's it.
Thank you.
So this is the first meeting since the big comedy show. I opened up Irvington Theater, it was sold out.
That's great.
It was very well received, people seemed to have a good time, it seemed to be a really good event, and a lot of you were there. I was lucky enough to sit right across the aisle from Larry. And yeah, it was just an amazing night, and it was so good to see the theater open, it's so good to see it filled, it was so good to see such great entertainment on the stage. I mean, these are really, I counted, it was like something like, between the four of them, there was something like 9 late night network show appearances, between Letterman and Tonight Show and all those others and everything, so. It was just a really great thing. Greg gave me a report that there were $14,775 in ticket sales, and they were able to get $5,000 in sponsorship for the event as well. So, and that $5,000 almost pays for the comedians. So it was almost like having a very, very discounted show. Not almost, it was like having a very discounted show. And the effect they've seen in other places. Their Instagram followers went up from 2471 to 2770 in 3 months, and that's the same amount of growth in 3 months that they had between 2022 and 2024. So obviously, there's a lot more attention being paid to the theater online as well. And they currently have 24 events planned or dates being held between November and May, which is a mix of for-profit rentals, nonprofit rentals, arts partners, and self-produced events. So they're on track to make more in revenue over this time period than they ever have before. They remember before the pandemic, they were going to break the record that year. The 1920 fiscal year would have broken a record. Obviously, everything came to a halt in March, and that ended that. But Greg is just getting besieged by people who want to rent the theater.
That's great.
Yeah, and it's not like in the past it was like the same kind of usual type of suspects you think of. Now I met on the open house this guy who produced a lot of stuff in the city, and now he and his partner are looking to do things in Westchester. So December, I think 19th, look it up. Don't trust my date, but it's right around there. There's going to be a yacht rock cover band at the theater, and they've never done an event in the theater before, and he wants to do one every quarter. So there's a lot of people coming out of the woodwork that really. So this has been the opening event was really important beyond just the great community aspect. It's also really been great for the theater. So that's the theater, and for the library, I just came from the library board, and as always, I am so impressed. So their book sale was hugely, actually the Friends of the Library's book sale was hugely successful, $4,500, which is like the second most ever from what I gleaned from the meeting. So they were very excited about that. And just like, the amount of usage, in the month of October, they ran 24 children's programs that had 410 participants. So, and I mean, obviously they do adult ones too, 132 participants. They've also had about 14 events where people coming into using the space. So the library is really a real center of a lot of what goes on in the village, and they just do great work, and I just want to highlight that. So, that's all I have.
Fantastic.
So from DPW, I have an update. DPW, their complex emissions project, the DPW break room, storage room, and sanitation garage, they completed the work on that. Installation of tree pit and sidewalk restoration is complete at 85 Main Street. They applied for the Arbor Day certification for 2024. They prepared truck 22 for the winter season. They hung the military banners, installed LED lights in the Irvington parking lot, street lights. They repaired the catch basins at 38 Butterwood Lane East, repaired the street light at Connor Court and Manor Pond Lane. They assisted the high school with street light issues and assisted the library with new computers, and they removed and cleaned and replaced all litter baskets. And I'm sure in addition to all the stuff they normally do, so. That's it from my end.
Thank you. Village Administrator's report.
Nothing to report tonight.
Village Treasurer.
Yes, so.
I know you've been busy.
I have. So last Friday, we had our bond rating call with Moody's. Larry, John, and I were on the call. And it's in anticipation of our 10.03 million public improvement serial bond sale, which is scheduled for Wednesday. So we have a rating of, they gave us a rating of AA1, which is what we've had, which is a very good rating. It's only one step down from AAA, which is the absolute highest. So in Moody's report, the summary says the Village of Irvington benefits from a large, strong, and stable tax base, a history of strong financial management reflected in very large reserves, liquidity, and low levels of debt. And the strengths that they listed are a large and stable tax base, strong local economy, strong resident wealth and income profile, close proximity to the New York City metropolitan area, and very high reserves and liquidity.
Great. That's good news. Thank you very much. So I'm assuming there's not much for us to do for Wednesday. It's sort of on autopilot then, or no?
Yeah, the financial advisors pretty much run the bond sale, and then they'll report back to us the results.
And is there one central underwriter? Like I know JP Morgan does a lot of this stuff, but we don't know until it's all done, or?
No, we don't know until the bids come in.
Okay.
Very often they are syndicators that bid, but it
Got
doesn't
it.
have to be.
You see what happens.
So,
Okay.
and you, as far as any paperwork, you, in the bond resolutions, you authorize the treasurer to do everything. So,
Absolutely, yeah, I wasn't worried that we would have to leap into the fray. It was more, I was just curiosity about the process.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, village attorney's report.
I don't have a legal report, but just two quick comments on things that came up tonight. One is just within the last 2 weeks, if anybody reads the Wirecutter in the New York Times, I'm kind of hooked on it, but there's an article recently about electric leaf blowers, about quiet leaf blowers, and it rated which ones were the best ones and talked about how effective they were. So if you go to the New York Times Wirecutter and just look up leaf blowers, it'll show up. And then the other thing I wanted to say, I'd say goodbye to Larry. I hope it's not goodbye, but tell Larry Lonke and Larry Agrodnik what a pleasure it's been working with you, and wishing you luck and hoping I see you around.
Very kind.
Yeah, thanks,
Okay.
Marion.
Thank you very much. So I guess I'll make a motion to go to executive session.
just before you do that, was
Yeah.
sorry, there was no public comment. Probably imagine.
Yeah.
Okay, bye, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.
Save
Thanks,
it,
Larry.
you never know. I still have mine from the first time around.
There should be a ceremony.
You have one in executive session.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
motion to go to executive session.